and welcome to my first devlog of Astro, a multiplayer first-person shooter set in an asteroid. I've wanted to make an FPS for several years since I like playing these types of games, and I've been hooked on the idea of zero-gravity movement. I started in Unity, prototyping an outer space grapple game, which felt really smooth. However, I didn't get very far before I moved to Unreal Engine because I thought it would be a lot easier for a multiplayer. While the core mechanics of my idea revolved around zero gravity, the original vision was for a tactical shooter with map destruction and team coordination. But after testing the first prototype, everyone agreed that simply moving throughout the terrain was what made the game fun, and so I decided that this should be the main focus of my game. After all, how can I make a game in zero gravity not be about movement? And so I set out to understand the nature of movement shooters. I quickly realized that this was an underdeveloped category of the FPS genre, and there would be some potential for my idea. See, movement shooters are primarily single player, with classics like Ultra Kill, Get to the Orange Door, and Boomerang X, which all have fast-paced gameplay and make the player feel immensely powerful. Multiplayer games aren't typically categorized as movement shooters, however many fall into this category at varying degrees. Quake and Unreal Tournament, as well as pretty much any other arena shooter, are some of the purest movement shooters with insane skill ceilings. More recent titles like Titanfall and Lawbreakers have a large focus on movement, but have been unable to match the success of their predecessors, not because of bad gameplay, but on account of marketing or release timing issues. Additionally, there are many games which sort of fall under this category, such as Black Ops 3 or Destiny, but their movement mechanics don't have as high of a skill ceiling. I felt that going in this direction would be good for my game, as it would also require considerably less content since, as of now, I don't intend to create a hero shooter, and instead I can focus more on getting that perfect flow of physics-based momentum, which I feel much more comfortable doing. That being said, I'm still in the early stages of development, so I could take the game in any direction I want, but here's what I have so far. Now, I know the Astro makes you feel like you're having a trip, and the gun looks like it's made out of plastic, but most of the core mechanics and networking logic is in place, so I'm happy. You're probably wondering, if you can't walk in this game, how exactly do you move? I wanted to give the user full 6 degrees of freedom control, but instead of an instantaneous feedback system, where the player controls their direction like most FPS games, I opted for a force-based system, where the player controls thrusters which indirectly influence their velocity. W and S control the forward and backward thrusters, A and D is left and right, and E and Q is up and down. To rotate, the mouse x-axis is yaw, and the y-axis is pitch, so aiming is the same as any other shooter, except that you can do this. And then lastly, to roll, you can use Shift A and D for rolling left and right. As far as the gun mechanics go, the player can shoot with left click and reload with R. But right now, you can't really interact with the Asteroid besides colliding with it, but I plan to change this in the future. When I was first creating the idea of the game, I wanted massive maps with 32 players on each team, battling it out in outer space. But then it came time to have multiplayer, and see, I was under the impression from YouTube tutorials that you just had to check a box. But then I discovered that built-in multiplayer support was only compatible with boots on the ground movement. Most video games don't actually apply physics to the main character. So shortly after, I came to the conclusion that I just needed to put a rigid body on the player, and then network the physics. This was obviously no trivial step, and I tried several janky solutions. However, the truth was inescapable. I was going to have to write my own custom physics engine.
So that's exactly what I did.
After about a month of work, I finally made it. Networked physics. A huge downside to networking physics is that each entity that I want to be synced up for all users has to send a lot more data to the server and back, so I wouldn't be able to support a large number of players. But this is fine, since I don't think I'd have the marketing budget to meet that kind of a player base anyway. I'll probably stick somewhere in the range of 6v6. The second major feature of this prototype was the Asteroid. As a solo indie developer in college with no art experience whatsoever, I knew that making a highly detailed environment would take way too long. So instead, what I needed was procedural generation. I had previously messed with the marching cubes algorithm twice before, and so I decided it would be the perfect fit for my game, since randomly generated levels would be pretty novel in an FPS, and this type of terrain created by the algorithm would be perfect for a porous asteroid. As you can see, even with some simple math, I can create some pretty interesting formations. One major downside of the current version is that I can't really texture the asteroid. Each triangle of the mesh has one color, which gives the material this plasticky look, and the lighting is horrible. My end goal is to remove the stale, low poly feel, which is pretty ambitious given most other marching cubes implementations either embrace the low poly or just use this method called triplanar texturing, which is a little too gritty for me. Overall, the art is bad, but the form is great, and I think it can do some really cool things with the algorithm to make each round feel exciting and fresh. Finally, near the end of the semester, when I should have been studying for finals, I got some friends together to play the first prototype. It didn't start off too great, but after some bug fixes, we were able to play some decent rounds of free-for-all. So this has been the conclusion of Prototype V1. To organize my development as efficiently as possible, I sectioned the project into these systems. I plan to spend about 1 to 4 weeks on each system, finishing with a devlog to show my progress. Once I've worked on every system, I'll have finished the current prototype version. Currently I've finished with V1, which just has the bare minimum, but in V2 I'll flesh out more content, and hopefully by V3 I'll have a build that I'd be comfortable doing alpha testing on. By V5, I want to release the game. The first category I will tackle is improving the Asteroid for V2, and now that school's out, I'll have a lot more time to focus on this project, and I'm really excited to see what I can accomplish this summer. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next devlog.
Respawning's working now.
Wait. Team. I versus Rishi. I have some beef with him.
Edo third partied my ass.
Third party?
Cringe.
The other guy's dead.